Okay, so picking up where we left off with the previous video, well, Spain was a collapsing empire and they couldn't hold on to their colonies in the Americas, right? What we call Latin America today. Venezuela, Mexico they were already gaining their independence. Other colonies were threatening to push back against Spanish colonialism. So this alarmed many of the European, not just Spain, but European empires because, you see pushback against colonies. So these various empires were actually threatening to send their navies to put down these revolutionary flare-ups. Now, the United States got word of this and warned these European empires to stay away, stay clear from the Western Hemisphere. And when you think about it in 1824, and you think about our place in the world, well, it's pretty bold to tell these powerful European empires to stay away when, we're barely, around for a few decades, right, as a country. So what that did, however, is um, it gave Americans a feeling of nationalism. This is not exactly economic nationalism, right? But it's more nationalism where you feel that commonality, that common bond that is felt when you live within a particular nation, right? We feel this in, let's say, sporting events today, like the World Cup or what have you, right? Olympics. So it's a similar feeling of a bond between various inhabitants, or let's say citizens, right? In this case, citizens of the Republic that's called the United States of America. Again, just newly born, but you're seeing that, period where people are actually thinking about the nation. If you recall with the Articles of Confederation, our first constitution, right, during the Revolutionary War and afterwards until 1787, people put their state first before the nation. Now you're thinking about the nation, right? And still today, I would say most Americans, most of America, that is, maybe Texas is exempt from this, right? But many Americans put the nation before their state, right? I'm American first, Californian second, right? Okay, so that's this notion of increasing nationalism during this era of good feelings. Okay, so this is what we need to remember about this era is that it's increasing nationalism, primary economic, we have to say, but even with the Monroe Doctrine, I think it reflects that nationalism and that feeling of confidence that the United States is this, newly formed yet vibrant and energetic nation. Okay, so now remember that we described the Jacksonian period or the Jacksonian era as a period of a couple of revolutions, the economic revolution that occurs as well as the political revolution. So what we will discuss first is the economic revolution, and that's referred to by historians as the market revolution. Okay, the market revolution. Now, what makes this period revolutionary? This is what we'll devote our discussion to when we discuss this revolution. Okay, but first of all, I have to mention this. The market revolution is kind of in between uh, the Industrial Revolution, which follows the market revolution, and you could just call it agrarianism, pure agrarianism, which was before the market revolution. Okay, so that actually needs further explanation, obviously. So, agrarianism, when you think about that, agrarian, that means that agriculture is the primary economy, political economy. And if you see a farmer, right, they're producing for their own self sufficiency, right? And, you just think about the peasant classes, peasant farmers, you think about even feudal social hierarchies, right? The aristocracy. But what's important about agrarianism is that, the market is not there in everyday life, right? For example, I just talked about farming for self sufficiency. You don't need to go to a market to produce your food in an agrarian revolution. Sure, there might have been some markets around, but you go to your, farm that you have, and the soil that you work on. If you want to get your, other foods like protein, well, you go slaughter a chicken, right? You don't go to a market and buy chicken, right? Like we do today at Ralph's, which is a market, or even a restaurant. Go through the drive-through today, that's a market, right? So in agrarianism, the market is not there pervading all aspects of everyday life. Okay. Now, industrialization, which, as I mentioned earlier, comes around the 1850s, the Industrial Revolution. Well, that's when factories make everything. Okay, almost everything. I shouldn't say everything, but almost everything you could think of. Okay, the factory makes, whether it's our basic necessities like food, um, even our clothes, leisure activities. Well, the market makes that. It produces commodities, and we go to the market and exchange our money, right, for that product. Okay, so the market obviously is still there, but the way you get those commodities, those goods, is through the industrial process. So the market revolution is kind of in between those two eras. What I'm trying to say here is that um, it's not the industrial revolution yet. Okay, that's one thing to remember. The market revolution is not the industrial revolution, but rather it's a transitional phase whereby American society is no longer purely agrarian, as I just described, right? But it's not yet industrial. But what's important is that the market is there in everyday life. Stated otherwise, you cannot escape the market, it becomes inescapable, right? Again, think about the basic necessities in life, whether it's a need like food, shelter, right, or wants, even like, you know, luxury items, right? Everything you do to obtain those things is through the market today, right? We go to the market when we're hungry, as I described. We buy bottled water today, right, rather than going to a stream, or the food rather than having livestock or growing it, right? When we need clothing, well, we go to a store, to a market, in other words, like Macy's or Nordstrom, whatever, right? Rather than making it at home, right? Homespun clothing, stuff like that. Okay. So, and you could go on, like all the things you need, right? Is there to purchase through the market. Okay, so that's what makes it a market revolution. The market revolution, which happens, historians are not sure when it definitively begins, but let's say during the early national period. Okay, and it's basically this period in our economic history whereby the market is there and you cannot escape it. Okay, and economic transactions are no longer localized to where where you have were born and where you live, right? For example, if we look at our clothing today, we could see it's made in wherever, made in Nicaragua, made in Vietnam, right? We don't even know the person who made that clothing, right? It's not stated on there, right? Compare that. Now that's market, right? Today, compare that with pre-market where you know, you're the one making your clothing. Or you could go to the seamstress down in the village, right? And you know that person. It's a face to face transaction. You know that they're making your clothing, right? Or think about any other goods like an axe or a plow. Like these artisans are making those for you, right? Um, horseshoes, what was needed back then, right? You had this transaction face to face. Okay, so that's what we mean. Number three there on the slide, economic transactions transcend region, right? It's no longer purely local. And again, this happens before the Industrial Revolution. Okay, don't get it confused. The market revolution is not the Industrial Revolution. It precedes it, but again, it's revolutionary because again, it is like it is today, right? That economically, that is, your economic transactions transcend time and space, so to say, and it's no longer purely local as it had been for thousands of years. That's why it's revolutionary. So this brings us to the question, what was necessary in order for the market revolution to occur? Well, we already discussed the first one with the American system. That's the transportation revolution, right? And again, this happens between the War of 1812 and let's say, the 1840s, 1850s, where we see networks of roads and canals and steamboats and ultimately railroads by the 1840s, right? And you need that to ship commodities to all the markets across the nation, however small or large it was that time, right? And so it allows for the movement of goods and products into much wider markets. Okay, and not only that, it enabled, of course, the movement of people. Right, it's not just for like sightseeing, right? No, it's for the labor movement, right? For people to serve who are serving as a labor force to get from one labor market to the next, right? Okay, now also what you see here is the factory system emerge, and I think we're all familiar with what a factory is, right? It's within this, let's say, this building, right, where you see the reorganization of production, right? Previous to the factory system, you had individual craftspersons or artisans, like I just described, right? Like a blacksmith or a seamstress making various commodities, right? And it took forever to make one, right? It took the specialized knowledge that that person had, right? But in a factory, what you do is division of labor. You distribute the labor involved in making any given commodity, right? And you just, when you divide the labor, it makes it much quicker and efficient. And there's no need for specialized knowledge that the blacksmith had or the seamstress had, right? That craftsperson where he knows how to make the best plow or the best boots, right? What you do is when you distribute within the factory, you distribute the labor, they just focus on one part, not the whole thing, right? And that's what makes it innovative. Okay, when you distribute the labor and you have specialized tasks rather than, knowing from bottom up how to make something that, let's say, in the agrarian society, that person had, right, that knowledge, the artisan, that artisan needed to have that knowledge, right, to be an artisan in that society. Okay, so this is the factory system, and put it this way, it's all about productivity in the factory, right? If you owned a factory, you're the factory owner, and you could produce so much, right, compared to, let's say, an agrarian society where, the person could only make so little, right? If you could produce a lot and then sell it, of course, then you're going to make so much profit. And that's the incentive, right, with the factory system. Put it this way. Let's say you have a cigarette roller, right, cigarette maker in a pre-market society, right? Let's imagine that that cigarette roller could roll maybe 200 a day, 300 a day, right? Now, imagine a factory, on the other hand, where they have distribution of labor, right? Well, they could produce up to 70,000 cigarettes a day, right? And especially later with, industrial, innovations like machines, right? So imagine that 70,000 cigarettes, and you could sell 70,000 cigarettes because nicotine is addictive, right? So you can make so much money if you're a factory owner compared to that pre-market artisan or craftsperson, right? So again, this is why it's innovative, and it's going to allow the market system to pervade American society at the time.